until this becomes your resting place. This becomes your resting place. I won't let sleep come to my eyes until this becomes your resting place. This becomes your resting place.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Lunch and Learn. I'm so glad you guys are all here today. You guys look great. You could be anywhere, but you decided to be here, and so we're grateful for that. Okay. My name is Gigi McKinney Banks, and I work in pastoral care right across the hall here. I work alongside Sinai, and so I have the honor of introducing my friend. Sinai Thao joined the Wooddale Church staff as Director of Recovery in 2023. Since 2021, he has also worked with Minnesota Adult and Teen Challenge, where he was once a program participant. Sinai earned a bachelor's degree in Christian ministry from Crown College in 2023 and is pursuing a master's in Christian leadership from North Central University. His passion is working with people in recovery, and he aims to one day plant a church that focuses on those who are recovering. He's one of 11 children in his family. Sinai's life verse is Romans 5:8. But God demonstrates his own love for us in this: while we were still sinners, Christ died for us. Ladies and gentlemen, Sinai Thao.
Oh, thank you, Gigi. Like Gigi said, my name is Sinai Thao, and I started here at Woodbury in September 2023 as the Director of Recovery, and that's just a fancy way of saying I run their Celebrate Recovery group here every Tuesday night. We meet across the hall, and I'll talk about that in a little bit, but so today we're going to talk about the topic of how to come alongside someone and how to help someone who is battling addiction. And the smart people have decided that the term addiction is no longer a term that should be used, and it's now called substance use disorder, or SUD. I still from time to time refer to it as addiction. But your licensed alcohol and drug counselors and mental health therapists prefer to use the term substance use disorder. What I'm going to talk about today, like I said, I'm not a educational expert on the topic. My experience and my job, my career has led me to a lot of what I'm going to talk about today, and I've taken the classes. The alcohol and drug classes. My minor, when I got my bachelor's in Christian ministry, my minor was supposed to be alcohol and drug counseling, but because of the way the classes worked out, I'm one class shy. I'm going to go back and get it someday. But this time I have to pay for it out of pocket, which is like, So what I'm going to do today is I'm going to share with you my story, and then I'm going to talk about why does it matter? Why does it matter that we care? Why does it matter that we come alongside those that we love? And then I'm going to talk about risk factors and what we need to look for, and then how to talk to someone who is battling substance use disorder. So like Gigi said, I grew up in a large family, 11 people. Large Hmong family in South Minneapolis. My dad was a pastor. So a lot of stories that you hear about people who are battling substance use, they come from generational addiction. They come from grandparents or the parents. A lot of the people I know who are battling it, their parents are the ones that actually gave them their first drink or their first cigarette. And my story is different. And I like sharing that piece of my story because I like to talk about how drug abuse and alcohol abuse just doesn't care. Doesn't care about your skin color, doesn't care about how rich or poor you are, what social economic class you're in, where you live, urban or suburban. It's a disease that can take over anyone's life. And so I grew up in a large Hmong family, 11 of us. third from the youngest. And as you can imagine, my dad was running a church in South Minneapolis in the 80s and 90s. And church became something we just did. It was forced on me. Because my older siblings did it, my parents did it, and we were going to church twice on Sundays and Thursday nights. And that started this, not looking back, it started something in me where I started to rebel and started to kind of distance myself away from God. And life was okay, though. We had everything we needed. I didn't start my journey with alcohol until I was a senior in high school. And I started drinking as a senior in high school because all the cool kids were doing it, and I wanted to be cool. And so I started smoking, I started drinking, and senior year went fine, though. I graduated. I actually went to St. Thomas University for 2 years, my freshman year and sophomore year. But my freshman year is when I realized that I was different than everybody else, because we would hang out and we would drink, my roommates and I and friends. And when they were ready to go to church on a Sunday morning, I was still looking to continue drinking. And that's when like I said, I realized that I was different. And my freshman year was a blur. I was put on academic probation, means, I couldn't hold a 2.0 GPA average as a freshman in college. And I struggled. And I lived on campus, and the second year, I moved home. And I was still at St. Thomas, and that's when I met the woman that I later married as a sophomore, and she was a freshman. This was 1999, and the relationship was great. It was really good. Fast forward a couple years, in 2001, like I said, my dad was a pastor, and what happened was he wasn't happy that she and I were living together, and we were living in a relationship of this world. And in 2001, he and I got into this huge argument. It was a Sunday afternoon. We got into a huge argument. I cursed him. I called him a hypocrite. I called him all these bad names. And a few days later, he had a heart attack. And then he spent 3 weeks in the hospital, Fairview, U of M. And then he had triple bypass surgery. I remember that Saturday that he had a triple bypass surgery, or that Sunday that he had triple bypass surgery was the same day that Dale Earnhardt Sr. crashed, and he died. And then my dad had a stroke, and he passed away. That's when the resentment towards God started, right? I started to blame God for, hey, why'd you take my father away? Like I didn't get a chance to restore that relationship, and I started to walk away from the church. And but then me and that woman, we got married in 2006, and I thought that getting married would do a couple things in my life, right? That I would have to grow up. Now I'm married, I have responsibilities. Looking back, though, without changing the core of the trauma that I went through in my dad's funeral and his death, nothing changed. I continued to drink. I was so spiritually, emotionally, mentally immature that all I knew to do was to turn to the bottle and to continue drinking. And right away, we decided that we were going to start a family, and in 2008, we had our daughter, Madeline. She turned 16 just not too long ago. And again, I thought, okay, now I have responsibilities of being a new husband, a new father. Life's going to change. I'm just going to get it. It's just going to work. And it didn't, because I never worked on the trauma from 2001. It was just always suppressing it with alcohol. And my ex-wife, she's my ex-wife, she filed for divorce in 2012. It was finalized in 2013. That's when I was introduced to cocaine. And cocaine and alcohol became one drug for me. When I had alcohol, I needed cocaine. When I had cocaine, I needed alcohol. I'm going to show you guys a picture. The picture on your left, my old driver's license, is me in the middle of my addiction. And the picture on the right is my newest driver's license. As you can see, someone actually pointed out to me, like, man, you can see it in your eyes. You can see the darkness in your eyes. I actually look younger on the right. These two pictures are probably 10 years apart. And that's who I was. That's all I knew how to do. And the next 6 years of my life, from 2013 to 2019, was a complete blur. Like, I look back, and there are things that I just don't remember. I was homeless. Well, let me take that back. I tell my friends I was homeless, but they're like, no, you were sleeping in a car. And I tell them, well, I still didn't have a home. I was homeless for a couple weeks. Lots of relational issues. I lost relationships with all my family. My daughter wasn't talking to me. And at this point, I gave up on God so much. I just hated God. Not only was I still dealing with the pain and trauma of my dad passing, now I was dealing with the rejection and the shame of a divorce. And I was ready to just walk away from Christianity completely. I started dating a Muslim woman, and if any of you understand Islam, for a Muslim woman to marry her husband, he had to be Muslim. I was ready to just say, hey, I'll be Muslim if this is what it takes to be with you. And so I continued to do what I knew how to do, and that was to get drunk and to get high, and it was a repeating cycle. I went through 3 different jobs, faced eviction, and it got really bad in September 2017. I was living with my brother in Woodbury, and at the end of a weekend of partying, I called in sick to work, and I passed out in my bedroom, and I called down to him. They get me to the hospital. He lives in Woodbury, and we went to Health East. They're running tests on me, and they say, hey, we can't help you. You have to go to St. Joseph's, where they have a cardiology department. And I go to St. Joseph's, and I spent 3 weeks in St. Joseph's in downtown St. Paul. And while I'm there, I was diagnosed with congested heart failure. I was diagnosed with stage 2 liver and stage 2 kidney failure. My stay there, I was told that if I didn't stop smoking cigarettes, I would die. And somehow in my mind, I stopped smoking cigarettes, but I didn't stop drinking or doing drugs, right? It just made sense somehow. And while I was in there for 3 weeks, I flatlined. I had a brother who was sitting next to me when it happened. He said my face turned white, my eyes rolled back. And when I came to, there was a bunch of people around me. That's all I remember. And I did what any good addict does. I got sober, got my family off my back, and I went right back to doing what I knew how to do, and that was to drink and to get high. At this point, mind you, that my family didn't know about the cocaine use. They only knew about the alcohol abuse. And what I mentioned that my dad died from a heart attack, had a stroke. So when you have those hereditary issues and you put just alcohol on top of that, like, it's pretty bad already. Now you're putting alcohol and cocaine on top of it. And so I got sober for a little bit, got my family off my back, and I continued to go through the pattern of bouncing between jobs and bouncing from couch to couch and doing things of this world that, the lying, the cheating, the stealing, and all that. And then January 2019, I moved out. I was living with a friend in Plymouth. And this time it was at the end of a long weekend of drinking and partying, and I called in sick to work again. And my girlfriend, the Muslim woman, she said, hey, well, I'm going to come visit you. I'll bring you some soup or something. And she came over, and I just told her I wasn't feeling good. I need to go to the doctor. We went to Fairview Urgent Care, and they said, again, we can't help you. You need to go to North Memorial because there's a cardiology department there. And so I get in the car. She drives me to North Memorial, and Here goes me and my addiction. As you can tell, you can see it in my eyes. The middle picture is me getting drunk, people writing on me. The picture on the right is, in the middle of addiction. The picture on the left is in the middle of addiction. Just the face that you can see. And this next set of pictures I'm going to talk to you about is the medical issues that I had. And in January 2019, when I told you my girlfriend put me in her car and took me to the hospital at North Memorial, we get there, they hook me up, they run a bunch of tests, and the internal medicine doctor comes in and he said, hey, your troponin levels were so high, we believe you had a heart attack. I was 39 years old. And I just couldn't believe it. I knew that I had those risks, but I didn't want to believe it. I was so manipulative, and I believed the lies that I was telling other people. Just to give you an example, she was like, hey, we have to call your brother. Your family needs to be here. And I was so stuck in my addiction and manipulation that I told her, I'm going to break up with you if you call my brother, right? And so she got scared. She didn't do that, but the nurse actually heard us, and she convinced me to allow her to call. And that was the first time I actually told someone outside of my circle that I was using cocaine, was the cardiologist. Because he came down and he said, I can't treat you if you're not honest with me. I'm so positive that he knew that I was using cocaine, but he needed me to say it. Because, they run drug tests and all that. And so he was the first person that I told outside of my circle that I was using cocaine. And I was in the hospital for 2 weeks, and I did the same thing I did in September 2017. I got out, I got sober, got my family off my back, and I went right back to using. Now, I was hiding it. I was in isolation. I was doing it in my room when no one was around, and I continued to live that lifestyle. In March of 2019, my cardiologist said, hey, your heart is working at 29%, or 25%. I was 39 years old. And so the picture on the right is when I had surgery and a defibrillator was implanted in my chest. And it's there in the event that if my heart ever stops, it shocks it to beat, and if it's beating too fast, it shocks it to level out. And the only cool thing about that is I have a nephew who calls me Uncle Iron Man because of the scar. And that was March 2019. May, in about a month, 2019, my baby sister, she got married, and I got drunk at her wedding. I made a fool of myself. Look back at some of the pictures, look back at this video that I saw on Facebook, and she was doing her bouquet toss, and I was just ruining it, and it was ugly, and I watched it, and their shame just started to come over my life. And my family, and this kind of goes into part of how to come alongside someone, my family stepped in, and they were there for me. They had an intervention. They sat me down. They talked to me. They were never like, you are doing something wrong. We hate you. We don't want you in our family. They came alongside me and showed me the love of Christ. And so what I did was I was convinced by them to go to Minnesota Adult and Teen Challenge. And I had a sister-in-law who was pushing me to go into Teen Challenge because she saw them on a choir trip. And then June 3rd, 2019, I entered into Minnesota Adult and Teen Challenge. I went through the short-term program. I went through the long-term program. And something that completely changed who I was at that time, Nick Hall, if you guys know who Nick Hall is, runs Pulse, and he was a speaker that first week, and he said, you don't understand how big of an opportunity you have. You have the chance to give a year of your life up to Jesus. There's so many people in this world that would love to do that and not have to worry about bills and life and stuff like that. So I decided early on that I was going to do the whole program. And so I went to the long-term program after 45 days in short-term, and COVID hit, and I was like, I'm done. I want out. I'm leaving. This is stupid. I can't do this. And but then my family was like, no, you don't want to come out. We don't have toilet paper. We don't have water. We had toilet paper and water. I mean, it sounds funny, but it was real. It was, and then we watched the news, and then the George Floyd thing happened, the riots, and it was like, man, it's worse out there than it is in here. So I stayed, and then I went to the Leadership Institute, which is right in South Minneapolis, where the Old Cedar Sinai Hospital is, on Chicago Avenue, and I was there for another year. So I spent 2 years in Teen Challenge as a client. And halfway through the Leadership Institute, I'm like, man, this relationship with Jesus, this is real. This thing is real. My relationships started to restore. I was, all my brothers, all my family. I told you guys I grew up in a family of 11. I have 10 siblings. And they were all back in my life. My mom passed away in January 2020. And in the middle of the program, right before COVID hit, and I talked about how my dad passed away, and it was complete darkness after he passed away. But when I was living in light and my mom passed away, I was happy. I'm like, okay, she's going home. She's got this life that she's going to go live in eternity with God. And there was the difference between living in darkness and living in light for me, because my perception of death was different. And everything just started to fall into place. So I said, I want more. I enrolled back into college, and it's not a set of pictures. The middle picture is last spring. I graduated with my bachelor's in Christian ministry at Crown College, and we actually did graduation here. So it's there's a lot of stuff that God has just laid out, right? Graduation was here at Wooddale. Now I work here. The picture on the far left is my commencement I became a pastor with the Assemblies of God. And then the picture on the right is the first day of my job here at Wooddale, and there was ice cream social day. And it was like, well, go serve ice cream on your first day. And it was fun. And that's what God has done in my life. He's just continued to bless me once I became obedient to what he wanted to do in my life. And so I believe that sometimes God allows things to happen in our lives because we see it like this, but God sees the whole picture, and he had a bigger plan for me. And so now I want to kind of transition to why does it matter, right? Why does it matter, or how can I help someone find freedom and hope from their substance use disorder? So the first part I want to talk about is why does it matter? I know it's hard to see, it's small, but I'll read through it. And so it matters because more than 1 million people have died since 1999 from drug overdose in America. Over 1 million people. The latest numbers that we have from the CDC, they're a couple years behind, is 106,699, almost 107,000 people died of drug overdose in the United States in 2001. We're looking at 108,000, somewhere around there, for 2022. In 2021, 45 people died a day from prescription pills. It's almost 17,000 people a year. And when I talk about prescription pills, I'm talking about pills that are prescribed by your pharmacist, that you pick up at CVS, that you pick up at Walgreens, that you pick up at Target. And people are taking those drugs and they're abusing it. And I'll talk about that in a little bit. More than 9,000 people died from heroin in 2021. 71,000 overdose deaths from synthetic opioids, so like oxy or heroin or fentanyl. The CDC did a 10-state study, and 57% of people who die from an overdose tested positive for fentanyl. Fentanyl is really crazy right now, and we're seeing it everywhere, and I'll talk about that in a little bit. My drug of choice, when I was in the addiction, cocaine was involved in nearly 23% of overdose deaths. And I'm so fortunate, right? I talk about the health issues, the high blood pressure, the hereditary health issues. I mean, 23% of people die from cocaine, and I had all those health issues, and I'm still here. What a blessing. In 2020, and this is staggering, in 2020, 2.5 million Americans aged 12 or older report having used methamphetamine or meth in the past year. 12 and older. We're talking about sixth graders. In Minnesota alone in 2021, there were 1,356 deaths of overdose. So I want to kind of, I'm a visual person, so I want to give you an idea of what this looks like, right? So 106,699 people died of an overdose in 2001. If you're a football fan, the Michigan Wolverines, they're the big house, is where they play college football. They hold 107,000 people, largest stadium in America. Imagine that's how many people have died in 2021 from an overdose. Let's bring it closer to home, because not only is it a problem in America, it's a problem in our neighborhoods, in Eden Prairie, it's a problem here at Wooddale. It's a problem everywhere. So I said there were 1,356 overdose deaths in Minnesota in 2021, and I want to put that in perspective for everybody in here. The attendance for Saturday night Easter service this year was 1,372 people. So if you were here during Easter weekend and you were in one of these services, there are all over 1,000 people except for the 11 o'clock service on Sunday morning. That's how many people roughly died from an overdose in 2001. I mean, I think the number is we average about 900 people in one of our two services on a regular Sunday morning. It's a lot of people. And so I want to move on to what are some risk factors. What as a parent, as a father, a mother, a grandparent, a brother, a sister, what can I be looking at? What are some signs that I can look for? And the first one is probably what I did the most was I disengaged from family and friends. Thanksgiving and Christmas, I isolated. I sat in my room. I didn't show up. I purposely turned my phone off just so that no one could call me to ask me where I was. I started to just push away my family. Negative emotions, right? So it was a roller coaster ride with emotions. I was angry, I was sad, I was mad, I was happy. I was all over the map. The third one is probably the biggest telling sign, because it's probably the initial thing that you could see first is someone having academic problems. If you have a kid who's battling substance use disorder or even nicotine, their grades start to fall. They start to skip school. And if you have an adult child who is battling substances, they've got job problems. Like I told you guys, from 2013 to 19, I had 3 different jobs. And I was so smart. I thought I was so smart. I would leave a job before they could fire me so it wouldn't look like I got fired. And just the manipulation. I had undiagnosed mental health problems, and those are tougher to recognize if you're not a professional, but you can start to see someone's behavior change and how they, like I said, the emotions of just blowing up when you're asking a question, or always being kind of poking when they're talking to their siblings or their friends. Pure substance use, it's a big one. If you have a child whose friends are using, there's a high chance that your child is using, or at least they're exposed to it every day, and that's not healthy, right? Because as we know, if you're around something all the time, you're going to start thinking about, oh, well, if they're doing it, I can do it. I mean, it seems to be fine. And a friend, might be able to have a drink a day where someone else might not be able to, because a drink a day turns into 2 drinks and turns into 3 drinks, and it becomes a lifestyle. When they're rebellious, lack of commitment, antisocial behavior, all these things are some of the top signs or top things that you need to look at when you're talking to someone or working with someone who you believe to be battling substance use disorder. So let's talk about what is being used, what is being abused. And so vapes and e-cigs, THC vapes, so that's marijuana vapes, gummies, marijuana or THC drinks, and then fentanyl and fake prescription pills. And fake prescription pills, another term for that is pressed pills. And so I brought some props. This is a vape. Like I told you guys, I work at Teen Challenge, and I run a house of 42 men, and it's amazing. I get to shepherd them. I get to disciple them. I get to come alongside them, be an older brother, be a younger brother to some, and just to pastor them and kind of show them that, hey, there's hope at the end of this journey. But this is, as you can see here, this is a vape. This is a regular nicotine vape, and it's so small now, right? In comparison, I wanted to bring up my earbuds. These are my earbuds. If someone you know has a vape, let's say your 12-year-old son or daughter has a vape in their pocket, and they're holding, it's in their pocket like this, you will never know. You might just walk by and think it's their earbuds. It's so easy to hide now. They're so much smaller. The FDA started regulating this in 2022, and I honestly believe we just don't have enough data right now on vaping. Why? Because why do I think it's bad? I mean, there's over 100 different synthetic chemicals in vaping. One of these vape cartridges holds 40 to 100 cigarettes. And so I joke around with the guys. I'm like, hey, can you test this to see if there's any juice in here? And the juice isn't just like smoking cigarettes. I mean, we got fruity flavors, we have vanilla, we have all these flavors that make it attractive because now you're addicted to the flavor and not the nicotine. So now you're like, oh, I want this taste in my mouth, and you're doing it, not knowing that you're putting nicotine in your system. Companies like Juul, and you've probably seen Juul when you're checking out at Holiday or a Speedway, and they have these little stands that, they sell in vapes. They're actually in litigation right now with Minnesota because they make products and they're pushing those products towards kids. THC vapes, these are a little tougher to get. You get them in smoke shops or you buy them overseas and they get shipped here. But a THC vape, the content of the amount of THC in a vape is 92%. In comparison, in the 90s, it was 3 to 5% in leaf marijuana. And today, even if you smoke marijuana today from a leaf and you're smoking it like they roll a joint or you put it in a pipe, we're talking about 12 to 20%. So 65% of high school students who report vaping also report that they use THC. This information is from the CDC. Dink and Gold Coast are common brands. So the consistency is different than nicotine vape because it has to burn at a higher temperature. So it's thicker, it feels like honey, and you might not even be able to see it or tell, but no, you should be able to because it smells. You should be able to smell it. But if you're just looking at it from through a glass window or something, you probably wouldn't even be able to tell the difference. Gummies is huge right now. And marijuana gummies became legal in 2022. The FDA is regulating the process, but they don't really have a process in place. They're regulating how it's sold and stuff like that. It can be sold at any store, gas station, grocery stores. The only stores it can't be sold at is a store that sells 100% liquor or alcohol. So like a liquor store or something like that. 5 milligrams serving size cannot have more than 50 milligrams per package. There is no limit on the quantity someone can buy. I can go and buy boxfuls of these and do whatever I want with it. We do have the guidelines that it can't look like candy, but, once someone's addicted, they're addicted. It doesn't matter what it looks like. And, I think where we're moving towards, since it's now legal in the state of Minnesota, is I think a lot of people are going to start treating it like alcohol, where it's okay to use, but you can't come to work high. You can't, do certain things high. And there are, at Teen Challenge, we work with a very good urine analysis place, and they're working on being able to test THC levels instantly versus through hair or blood or urine. And something that I think, the police and the state patrol need to start adapting because, you just don't know if someone's driving high. It's just as dangerous as driving drunk. The next one is THC drinks. And I was gonna say I got a funny story, but I got a crazy story. Last week, 2 weeks ago, I was at a grocery store. It wasn't one of the big grocery stores. It was one of the neighborhood co-ops. And I walked in, I saw a can, I grabbed it, I went to pay for it, and the cashier, he ID'd me. And I'm like, why are you IDing me? This is an energy drink, right? I was confused. And he goes, no, that's not an energy drink. That's a THC drink. So they're being sold openly at grocery stores. I don't know if you guys have seen it. I don't ever recall seeing it inside of Cub Foods or Rainbow, Alon's or Byerly's, but I have seen it at smaller co-ops and neighborhood grocery stores. And it's the same thing. It started to be legalized in 2022, the same content, and it can't look like other drinks, right? So they can't label it to look like, or produce it to look like Coca-Cola or Pepsi or anything like that. But if you ask me, it looks a lot like soda water. A lot like bubbly and a lot like that. This is where we're having a lot of problems right now is fentanyl and pressed pills. So what the CDC and other organizations believe is happening is China is shipping over all the ingredients to Mexico. Mexico then is mixing it and creating these pills. What's dangerous, though, is these pills, they're called pressed pills, but they're not being made by pharmacists or pharmacy companies. They're being made by the cartel and drug dealers. So the consistency in where the fentanyl is very different because you can have the same batch, and in part of that batch might be all the fentanyl, and another batch part of the other batch might be, meth. And so it's 80 to 100 times stronger than morphine. So about 2 months ago, I had my gallbladder removed. I had morphine. I woke up and I was feeling really good. And I was completely lost, completely didn't know where I was until I came to and they started telling me what just happened. I couldn't imagine being 80 to 100 times higher than that. It's just crazy. So fentanyl was associated with 77% of adolescent overdose deaths in 2021. 42% of pills on the streets are laced with fentanyl. And the crazy thing is it's cheap and easy to find. I live in South Minneapolis, and if you drive up and down Lake Street or 31st Street in South Minneapolis by where the Kmart or Kmart used to be down by Nicollet Avenue, you will see people who are currently high in addiction to fentanyl. What people are doing, what drug dealers are doing to get more fentanyl or to sell more product is what we call they start to mix it. They cut. We call it cut, or I did call it. So you would cut the drug with something else to get more of it so that you can sell more drugs. And what they're doing is drug dealers are using baby formula, baking powder, anything to mix in with fentanyl so that they can have more product to sell. And if you don't know, fentanyl is super deadly. Fentanyl the size of a grain of rice is enough to kill someone. And so it's a huge problem. Lots of people fentanyl is tougher to get off of. It's dangerous to get off of if you're not doing it properly. There are medications out there that can help someone withdraw or come down from fentanyl. And if you're not doing that, it can be really dangerous. And fentanyl is often used when mixing with other drugs like cocaine, heroin, meth. I have a friend who's currently in the middle of addiction, and he smokes meth. And he goes, no one's ever died from meth. And I said, you don't know what's in your meth. You don't. You don't know what's inside the drugs nowadays. And it's dangerous. So how do we connect with someone? How do you connect with someone who's currently battling substance use disorder? What you want to do is you want to keep it simple. Have some easy conversations with them, right? You have about 10 seconds before someone loses their interest with you if they're currently in addiction. I mean, I remember I was all over the place. If what you were starting to talk about didn't interest me, I was checked out. I might be sitting there with you, but I was mentally checked out. You want to listen to understand and not to respond. I know that's tough for a lot of us, where it's like, I want to fix this. I want to fix the problem you have. I'll talk about that in a little bit, but you want to listen to understand and not to respond. And this last one's true. People with substance use disorder crave genuine connection, right? We isolate ourselves so much that when someone's willing to talk to us, we want to talk to them, but we have to talk about the right things, and that's tough to figure out sometimes for us. So what they are looking for is someone to be transparent, to be honest, to be open. So let's talk about what works. First one is taking a relational approach. Be genuine. Be empathetic, right? And there are TED Talks on how to do motivational interviewing or active listening. These are things that work with someone who is battling substance use. Trauma-informed care, right? No scare tactics. Don't give them ultimatums. Don't say, well, if you don't stop, mom and dad, we're going to kick you out of the house. Because the first thing that person's going to do is just leave. Well, you don't want me, I'm just going to leave. You kicked me out. They're going to be telling the whole city that you kicked them out. So no scare tactics. Peer-to-peer community. This is my chance to plug Celebrate Recovery. So we meet Tuesdays, 5:45 dinner, 6:30 across the hall. My card is on the table out there, Celebrate Recovery information on the table. But it's an opportunity for people who have hurts, habits, and hang-ups. That's everybody in this room. You might not be battling substance use disorder. You might not have issues with alcohol, but you're dealing with something. Codependency, relationship issues. Celebrate Recovery offers a safe space for people who are battling those issues to come together and to talk about it. We do a large group, we do small groups, we focus on the 12 steps, but it's all, for example, like AA talks about the 12 steps, but we talk about those 12 steps and we put Bible verses to them, and we talk about Jesus. We don't call Jesus a higher power, we call Jesus, Jesus. So that's peer-to-peer, like Celebrate Recovery. Let's talk about trauma-informed care a little bit. I want to spend some time on here. Express empathy through reflective listening, right? You want to make sure that the person you're talking to understands that you're actually listening, right? You say stuff like, it sounds like you're saying ... or what you're saying is, right? You want to repeat what that person is saying. If they're telling you something, you want them to understand or to know that you're actively listening to what they're saying. And sometimes the best way to do that is to repeat what they're talking about. Avoid arguing, right? The goal is to walk with them and to come alongside them, not to point fingers. They already feel the shame. There's already a rejection in them, so don't push any more shame on them. Offer positive perspectives on negative information, right? So there's going to be setbacks. If you love someone and they're in the middle of their addiction, there's going to be setbacks. There are going to be times where they emotionally get set back or they might relapse. But think of the positive. Hey, you know, if you look at the whole picture, even though you've fallen back, I mean, you've done so much in the last 6 months. Let's keep going. Like, you know, this is just a little bit. Like when someone's in, this is how I share it with my guys. Your addiction and your recovery is just a little bit of what your life is. Just a tiny little bit. So let's focus on who you can be or what you can become and keep it positive. This next one, the say I just want you to be the best version of yourself. I had a brother, and one of my brothers, he said the next two with me. He sat me down in the middle of my addiction, and he said, bro, this is a judgment-free zone. And he truly meant it. What do you have to tell me? What do you want to tell me? Right? This is a judgment-free zone, and he meant it. And when I told him, I felt that I wasn't being judged. And then he said that, hey, man, I just want you to be the best version of yourself. And right now, you're not. We are here to help you. This type of language opens someone else up. Now, I'm not saying that we don't speak truth to them. In this last one, someone said to me, and I literally broke down and I cried because it was so truthful and it hurt so bad. She said to me, Sinai, if you don't get this right, Madeline, someone else is going to walk Madeline down the aisle. Madeline's my daughter. She turned 16. That relationship with Madeline is the only relationship God hasn't restored. And when I was done with Teen Challenge, I was so ready to say, hey, I'm ready. Why isn't she ready? And God allowed that time in the last couple of years for me to understand that I hurt her through my recovery, or through my addiction. I hurt her physically and emotionally, and all these things I hurt her, right? I mean, I didn't physically hurt her like you might be thinking, but there was neglect, right? And it just goes with the territory of being in addiction. And I had to learn that she had to recover at her own pace too. There was scars and there was pain. There is scar and there is pain in her that she has to overcome too. And I'm just putting my trust in God that He's going to restore that. So it's okay to speak truth over someone. You know, I tell my guys, I asked my guys about a month ago, I said, how many of you guys have girlfriends? And they raised their hands. Half the group did, and I said, man, if you don't get this right, she's going to marry someone else. Because you're either going to be dead or you're going to be in prison. You can't get married in prison. And so speaking those type of truths over people is okay. So the do's and the don'ts, right? So let's start with the don'ts. Don't be authoritative. Don't be demanding. Don't ask too many questions. You'll realize that people in addiction have these small little physical boundaries, and you can't break those boundaries. Don't chase after them. The cliche sayings don't work, like tomorrow's going to be better, everything's going to be okay, because we don't know everything's going to be okay. It might get worse before it gets okay. Don't take it personal. They're not mad at you. They're not using drugs because of something you did. It's a combination of things. It might be one thing that you have done in their life, but it's a combination of things. So don't take it personal and don't blame. That's the worst thing you can do to someone who's battling substance use, is to blame them for what they're going through. So let's talk about the do's. Do invite conversations while being calm. Stay calm. It's very difficult when you love someone and they're not doing what you're asking them to do, because you see that it can be better for them if they can just get through this, right? But you have to do it in a calm demeanor. Do hold people accountable. Like I said, hold them accountable. Allow expressions of emotions. If they want to scream, if they want to cry, if they want to shout, allow that to happen in a safe manner. Obviously, if they're throwing things and stuff like that, you want to leave that situation because it's not safe. It's okay to walk away from a conversation. It's okay to walk away. It's okay to be silent and just listen. And you want to ask things like I said earlier, how can I support you? What can mom and dad do to help you get through this. And then let it go. Sometimes they do things that you might just have to let it go. Be a little vulnerable here. There was a point in my time where I was living with my younger brother and my mom during my addiction. And I was doing things like taking money from my mom to go buy drugs. And my mom not once ever accused me, ever belittled me. And she let it go. And when she was about to die in 2020, she and I had a really good conversation, and it was easy to go and talk to her because she was never blaming. She was always loving. And so there are 5 things I want you to remember. And this comes straight from Scripture. Remember to love them like God loves. Right? John writes, "But anyone who does not love does not know God, for God is love." And be kind like God is kind. Paul writes in Romans 2:4, "Don't you see how wonderfully kind, tolerant, and patient God is with you? Does this mean nothing to you? Can't you see that his kindness is intended to turn you away from your sin? Be patient. Be patient like God is patient, right? It's a process. Someone's just not going to one day wake up and be sober. It just doesn't work that way. Now, God is powerful enough to do that, but, if God did that all the time for everybody, we would never learn, right? That's part of the process is learning. 2 Peter says, "The Lord isn't really being slow about his promise, as some of you people may think. No, he is being patient for your sake. He does not want anyone to be destroyed, but wants everyone to repent." Show grace like God shows us grace, right? Romans 3 says, "For everyone has sinned, we all fall short of God's glorious standard, yet God in his grace freely makes us in his sight. He did this through Jesus Christ when he freed us from the penalty of sin." And the tough one's the last one. Be merciful. Have mercy on them. Like I wrote there, not every setback, not everything they do needs to be punished. There's a way to come around them and love them through that difficult time. And Luke writes, "Be merciful just as your Father is merciful." And this is where I'm going to end. There are 3 things that we talk about, or they talk about in Al-Anon. And I want you to remember this. There are 3, we call it the 3 C's. I want you to remember them. You didn't cause it, you can't control it, and you can't cure it. But you can come alongside someone and walk with them, and to walk with them like how Jesus would, right? And one story that out of the Bible that I often talk to my guys about is Jesus had the opportunity to walk around Samaria and to avoid the woman at the well. But he knew he had an appointment with her. He knew that he needed to see her, and he met with her. And during that interaction, he showed love. He showed compassion. He didn't treat her bad. He didn't call her out for being at the well at noon when all the women were supposed to be at the well in the morning. So follow that example. Follow the example of Christ. Come alongside someone who is battling substance use disorder. Love on them. Listen to them. I hope that this Lunch and Learn has brought some insight. Like I said, a lot of this isn't from any clinical studies or any college or any education I have, but it's from experience of how people have talked to me, people have worked with me, and in my 3 years of working with clients and who are trying to find hope and freedom from addiction. So I just want to thank you guys for coming. Thank you for joining us, and yeah.
Let's thank Sinai for coming. Brother, great to have you here. We generally end with a couple of questions. I want to start with one, and then we'll have maybe room for 2 more. Was it named Cedars-Sinai Hospital before or after you came?
Before. It's actually where Prince was born, if you guys are
there you
familiar
go.
with Prince history.
Started in California, too, but that's a whole other story. Any questions for Sinai? Sharon, let's go right behind you, and then we'll come back to you, Sharon. Okay. In fact, let me bring the mic so we can hear it on the recording.
Hi, Sinai, I was wondering, for Celebrate Recovery, Alcoholics Anonymous has Al-Anon. Can anybody go to Celebrate Recovery to simply truly understand and develop empathy
Yes.
for loved ones? They can.
Yes, so two parts to that answer. We actually had a gentleman who was battling alcohol who was coming to our group, and his mom came along the first couple of times to support him. And we're definitely open to that. Brian, who's not here today, Brian and I are going, I get to go to California. Brian and I are going to the Celebrate Recovery conference in California this summer, and I'm going to sit in on their version of Al-Anon, and Brian's going to sit in on the kids' version of Celebrate Recovery, and we hope to expand that here because, at the end of the day, helping someone who's battling addiction is just part of it. As you heard from my story, it affects a lot of people, children and family, and we want to create that space for other people who are battling someone else's addiction, right? Because it's just not a battle that I battled alone. It's my family battled it with me, and giving them a space where they can be supported.
That's great.
So
Sharon,
that's coming.
One last one.
My daughter my parents are alcoholics, a lot of my siblings. I swore I would never drink because of it. But my daughter has a drinking problem. She swears she doesn't. Does she really know that she does?
It's tough to answer because everybody's different. For me, even when I went through my health problems, I didn't see that I had a problem. I thought this is what people do. This is what my friends do, and I'm used to it. And it wasn't until I started to see how it affected the people around me, that ripple effect, if you want to call it. When my daughter told me that she didn't want to talk to me anymore, she was 9 years old. I haven't seen my daughter since 2020, my mom's funeral. And, but when she was 9 years old, we had a conversation, and she said, Dad, I can't do this. And I asked her to take her out to her birthday, and she said no. And that's when I started to realize that what I chose to do in my addiction started to affect other people, and that I actually had a problem. But having a problem and wanting to overcome the problem are two different things. And even recognizing that you have a problem doesn't mean that you're going to start working on it. So yeah, it's possible that she realizes that she has a problem. But I think it's our job as people who are around people who are struggling to come alongside them and say, hey, mom and dad or grandma, grandpa, or your brothers or your sisters, like when we go out, we only have one drink. It's okay to just have one. Versus saying something like, well, you shouldn't have two, but to say the positive spin of it, it's okay to just have one. I think when we start pointing out the facts in a loving, kind way, it starts to grow on someone, and she might be able to see that it's a problem. To some people, it takes love. To some people, it might take an accident. To some people, it might be finger pointing, and it's very tough to answer that question without knowing who she is at the core. Yeah.
Well, thank you, Sinai. We're at the end of our time. There's some schedules on your tables of what's coming up next. You can certainly get online. Thank you for coming here today. Want to honor your time. If you have other questions for Sinai, feel free to come up and ask those. And glad that you're here today. Thanks.